Welcome to Reptile Fight Club. We got a good one for you tonight. I'm Justin Julander, and with me, as always, is my co-host Billy Hunt. How you doing, Billy?
Hey, what's up, guys? Taking over.
Chuck's a little late today, so we got Billy taking over, filling in here.
One slip up and you get subbed out.
Yeah. We don't have any patience for that kind of stuff. No latecomers. All right. Well, welcome to the show. How's it going?
It's going good. Yeah, awesome. I'm excited. I've listened to a few of the episodes you guys have done, and it's a really cool concept, and it's cool to have a show with a different, I guess, mentality to it, than all the other ones. So.
That's kind of what we were going for. I appreciate it. That's nice of you. Yeah. And I mean, I've heard you on several podcasts. We met in person, maybe more than once. I know for once for sure at Tinley. It's been a couple years, but yeah. So,
I was Jason Hood's do boy at that show. So people either thought I was Jason because I'm a little tall too. And, or they just forgot who I was. So, but yeah, we met there and chatted. So.
Yeah, I think Jason was really busy. I was thinking, I'll catch up with him, but he was busy talking to people, and so I'm like, I'll chat with Billy because I'd heard you on some of the podcasts, and I like the way you think and the stuff you work with. So, like, I got to chat with him. So, cool. Looks like you've how's your season going? How are things? Got eggs yet or parents?
I have one clutch. I have one clutch of Nova Guineas in the incubator. Always excited to get those. That's a project I'm really excited about.
That's cool. Not a lot of people working with them, or there's a couple.
No, but there's not a whole bunch. I think. Don't quote me on this, but I think only 5 breeders have produced them.
Okay.
So far, but they're gaining traction and they're getting out there more, and people are starting to appreciate them, and because they've been around for quite some time, but they're not flashy. They're khaki and brown snakes. So when you have all the morphs and the bright colors, I get that, but you're starting to get the more hardcore people that are starting to notice that they're really cool, and they don't bite. They're carpets that don't bite. So
that's crazy. So what's the story behind those? What kind of intel do you have on where they came from, or what's their background?
So as the story goes, they do come from Papua New Guinea.
Okay.
So it's kind of up in the air on what they are, as far as if they're a different subspecies or if they're just a locality, or if they're Papuan carpets, and it's just up in the air. Not enough has been done, and it's kind of hard to get over there, and for people to do the research needed, because of the area. But I mean, we did a write up on them in the magazine, one of the first issues, right. And the whole thing was like the mystery carpet, like what is the actual thing with it. I talked to Nick about it, and supposedly there's one guy in Europe that has the information, but he just refuses to talk to anybody. So here we are.
Yeah. Doesn't help when that kind of stuff impedes, the knowledge and stuff. So but they're an interesting thing for sure. I guess, I have a hard time as soon as you leave Australia and go north. I don't know why, but I'm not as excited about the New Guinea stuff as I am about the Aussie stuff. But that said, I mean, I have some green tree pythons from New Guinea, and I don't have any
baby
more.
Steps.
I got rid of all my IJs or New Guinea carpets, and so I don't have any of those anymore. But doing researching for the book, it was interesting to see kind of the disjunct population that's over there, and so that would be really interesting. I don't think there's really a genetic difference, at least not as of now, but I don't know if they've run the samples from the PNG side. Usually the samples all come from the Indonesian side, so it's hard to say, but. Yeah, definitely interesting. It needs more work up there, but
maybe one day we'll know.
Yeah, no, Daniel Natouche published a pretty nice paper on the animals up in New Guinea, so that was interesting and had some really good information that wasn't really had up to that point. So, Yeah. Good stuff. Well, that's cool. Yeah. You expecting a very big season or?
I'm hoping. I put a lot of stuff together, but you know how that goes. I'm kind of in that. Well, before I got that first clutch, I was in that panic mode of, oh, nothing's gonna happen,
Yeah.
phase.
that,
But I'm starting
that
to
we
see
all go
signs
through.
now. Yeah, like
Uh-huh.
I have a Maclot girl that's doing the pretzel thing now, so that's a
Mhm.
good sign.
Yeah.
I got another girl that's not eating and stuff, so I'm starting to get the good signs. So
Mhm.
hopefully it's a good season. Well, it already is. I got eggs, so it's
Yeah.
already a good
Yeah.
season. Everything else is a
Uh,
bonus from here. But
right.
um,
Yeah. All my carpets took last year off. So if I can get a couple carpet clutches, that'd be nice. I really need to produce some inlands and some other stuff. But it looks like
yes, you
I
do.
might
I
have a
agree.
jungle female that's going soon. So that'll be nice too to have more jungles on the ground. I haven't produced those for a while. Kind of laid off the carpets a bit after kind of all the ones were coming in from Europe and everybody was kind of morph hungry. And so I'm just like, I'm going to take a
Yeah.
break for a bit. But
Well, it's
just
cool to
producing
see
inlands.
that people are kind of stepping back from the morph stuff, and
Hmm.
it seems like they're more either want selectively breed, wild type stuff, or
Hmm.
locality stuff's taken a lot of traction lately too. So
Yeah.
it's funny seeing the cycles. When you're in it long enough,
Yeah.
you see the ups and downs of
Uh-huh.
everything and
For
all that.
sure.
So
Yeah.
it's cool to see like when I got into it, it was just Jags, Tigers, and Reds. That was
Hmm.
the thing, and then awesome IJs. And to see, the cycle do a dip and high end is pretty cool. So
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting when you stick around for a while, right?
yeah,
Not a
seriously.
lot of people do that anymore, but I guess there's some good long termers out there. Yeah. Speaking of which, I get to go. I'm headed up to Seattle next week for a work conference, and I'm gonna hang out with Casey Lazick, so that'll be fun.
Oh, there you go.
He's always good to hang with, and he's got so many cool stories. But one of my
Oh yeah.
heroes for sure, one of my mentors in herpetoculture. And I remember it was probably about what maybe 15, 20 years ago when I first met him. And it was it was at a conference up in Seattle again. It was one of my first ones after I got my job or started up at Utah State. And I just kind of like approached him out of nowhere and asked him if I could come to his house and all this stuff. And he's like, he let me come over to his credit.
Nice.
Yeah, it was really nice. So, and we've just been friends ever since. So it's pretty cool. So I'm
I've
looking forward to
noticed.
him.
I just don't mean to interrupt.
No, yeah, you're good.
But I've noticed like more recently, people aren't as open to let people come see their collection and stuff
Yeah.
now. People are a lot more guarded, and which I get. I mean,
Hmm.
I'm kind of the same way. Like if I've met you before, and I don't get weird vibes, yeah, sure, come. I'll talk snakes
Yeah.
with anybody. But someone
Hmm.
just cold messages me or just comes up, hey, can I come see the place? Like,
Yeah.
nah. So I guess I'm
Yeah.
part of the problem too. But
No, I mean,
uh,
you got to have a little, and I think, we sat and chatted for a while before he even offered to show me the animals. Like I was like, I just want to meet you. You're like a legend,
yeah,
and
for
so,
sure.
I guess maybe we worked up to the point where he's like, okay, this guy's okay or something. But
Yeah, yeah.
yeah,
It's a
we,
it's a process.
yeah, for sure. Well, I guess why don't you do a quick introduction? Tell us kind of how you, or tell me. I guess there's no Chuck, there's no us right
Yeah,
now. So tell
I'll
me how
be
you,
Chuck. Yeah.
or the listeners, right? Yeah. How you got into this, or what's your place in herpetoculture?
All right. So my name's Billy Hunt. I run Uwabami Reptiles out of Tampa, Florida. Uh, I got into reptiles, I think, first or second grade, something like that.
Yeah.
Uh, like most of us.
uh,
I wasn't, surprisingly, being in Florida, I wasn't the kid going outside catching everything. I was kind of more of a fish person at that
uh-huh.
point. I
Yeah.
had, even though I was young and a kid, I had a few years of like building my own tanks and doing all that stuff. So
Hmm.
then it morphed into, oh, I see these leopard geckos at the pet shop, and oh, let's do that. And then that turned into a handful, and then Uromastics, water dragons, chameleons,
Hmm.
all
Yeah.
the stuff you get into. Because I wasn't in the snakes at first.
Uh-huh.
I was, kind of spooked by them.
Uh-huh.
And that kind of, how it goes when you're kind of fearful of something, you kind of get fascinated by it. And then the more you know about something, the more interested you are. And then this happens.
Right.
Yeah.
As he's talking in front of a wall of reptile cages. Yeah.
Yeah.
When were you when you how old were you how old were you when you got into the snakes, I guess?
I was, what was I, 14 or 15? I was just started high school. I made the decision that summer before I started high school, actually before that I was going to get a snake. And I'm doing research. I found carpet pythons. I found Caponetto's old website, Will Bird's old website, your website. I printed off all the stuff with them, and I decided I wanted a male IJ because they were small, smaller. They had the color scheme that I liked. I really like earth tones and stuff like that. I went to Daytona that year, and the rest is history, as they say.
Right.
Yeah.
Once you see him in person, that big change, I think.
Yeah. I was so it was actually Nerd's Table that I found because it was like a 3-year-old male. That's what they told me. It was probably an import. Who knows? But I sat there and held that thing for probably 45 minutes, and the guy Kevin wasn't the one talking to me. It was one of the other guys. And I would think of a question because I knew all the questions, but then when it's the spotlight's on, you're like, oh man, what do I say? And he was so cool and so easygoing. He would talk to me for a little bit, and then he saw I was thinking. He was like, hey, I'm gonna go talk to this person. I'll be back. And he did that a few times, and it was just a good experience all around. And obviously that snake, secured my love for Morelia and carpets and stuff.
Yeah. That's awesome. Well, and you've got some really great projects over there. I really like the coastal stuff you're working with, and
so I got into it more on the IJ side. That was my main focus, because one of the big purchases I made early on was it was a 10 lot of farm bred babies from Dan O'Leary.
Yeah.
Once I got my house, I'm like, okay, I got this. I can, pretty much do what I want now. And I got some really cool ones in that group. And then just how things work out, I ended up getting a couple coastals, getting a few more coastals. And now I look at them like, when did I get more coastals than IJs? And just kind of morphed into that.
Yeah.
When you ask about like my place and everything, I guess I'm known as the stripe guy. Obviously not as much as Balin or, the real guys, but that seems to be the thing that I get drawn to the most. So I have stripe projects in coastal, jungle, IJ, crosses, if it has a stripe, it's kind of hard for me to say no. So
yeah, I'm the same way. I love the stripe stuff. Yeah, that's good stuff.
Nice of you to join us.
Hey, it's Johnny Come Lately.
Our guest has arrived.
My bad.
You've been replaced, Chuck. You've been replaced.
I deserve it. I deserve it. How dare I?
All right. I? You get one strike on this podcast.
Yep. Yeah, I know. I'll never live it down coming from you.
Oh God! Well, you had to remind me we were recording a couple weeks ago.
That's fair. That's fair. I should at least get a partial pass here.
Exactly.
But
well, good time. We just kind of introduced Billy, and we can move on or get into the fight. Cool. I suppose. So, unless you got anything to say.
No.
Nothing to say.
I apologize.
All right. Well, yeah, we were just talking about his collection, striped carpets. That gets my excitement.
Kick ass striped carpets.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. There's something about a striped carpet that just does it.
That was my
striped anything really. I like striped snakes in general. Yeah. Striped lizards.
So
I had some striped Levis for a little while.
I said back in the day, when they were doing the whole light side, dark side thing, that Team Coastal was actually Team Solo. So
yeah, that's right.
I like that.
So what would that? I guess that would be Kylo Ren then, if you're into coastals and IJs.
See,
so.
but then you just
There you go.
yeah, I guess. Okay, I get what you're
You're
saying.
dark side.
I get what you're saying
Solo.
now. Yeah.
Okay. I don't know if you're Star Wars nerds, but I guess.
Yes, I am.
There's a couple of us out there.
I
right?
saw Empire Strikes Back in the theaters, so
there you go.
Yeah.
There you go.
The real fan. Yeah.
At least the old fan. I don't know, like
I think I saw the original one, but I think I was an infant when the New Hope came out, my parents took me to that.
I was certainly around, but definitely young enough that I probably can't legitimately claim I remember seeing that movie.
Yeah. Oh, I don't remember at all. But then my parents got the soundtrack, and I'd sit by the radio player or the record player and play that over and over.
Nice.
And get all excited about the music. So grabbed me from an early age, I suppose. But all righty then. I guess if we don't have anything else to say, we can start fighting here. So today we are going to talk about the, pros and cons or one side versus the other of either working for a professional breeder or kind of learning on your own and developing your own techniques and learning strategy through just working with different animals. So should be an interesting topic. Let's see how it goes here. All right. Well, Chuck, do you want to flip to see who gets to debate Billy?
Sure.
Okay. You want to call it?
I can.
I'll try to moderate my flip strength here so you can watch and see.
Can I see your I want to see your hand. That was heads, I think.
You are correct, my friend.
See, I like to see his hand because he telegraphs now. So I don't know if you've caught it.
He's got me all figured out.
On previous episodes, I actually telegraphed this. So anybody who watched Justin flip, he typically, his low flips are tails, his high flips are always heads. So
good to know.
Yeah.
You got a sharp eye, Chuck.
I will take the debate this time.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll let you moderate.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, Billy, your turn. See if you can see my flip strength on that and give it a call.
All right. That looks high, so I'll say heads.
And it's heads. So get to choose which side you want to defend.
I will choose learning on your own.
Okay.
Yeah. Benefits of training under pro breeders for Chuck and learning on your own for Billy.
Cool.
All right. Do you want to go first or do you want to let Chuck go first?
I'll let Chuck go first.
All right.
He's into it.
Chuck, the old putting his strategy on him.
Yes.
All right.
So I think one of the main things that first I'd say is that, learning from a professional breeder, definitely has its advantages and you're kind of ahead of the curve. You're kind of already being taught ahead of other people's mistakes. They've made the mistakes and you've kind of benefited from the what they've learned and their experience, and they can kind of teach you those pitfalls without you necessarily having to make them. And, as we've probably all learned with our mistakes, sometimes they can be expensive and sad and they can kind of hurt a little bit. So, sometimes if you can, get around the hump, so as to speak, of not having to suffer through some of that, I think that's probably one of the bigger reasons why learning from a professional is advantageous.
All right. Strong start. What do you got, Billy?
All right. So, I can't disagree with any of that. And it all sounds good. So I guess a reason I picked this topic, or out of the ones that we had, I tried like hell to find somebody to kind of take me under their wing, if you will. And time again, I got, basically it didn't happen. So it's pretty much a trial by fire thing.
They didn't want to give you the big salary and benefits that you were asking for.
No, no benefits, no stock options, nothing like that. So pretty much I didn't have a choice but to learn on my own. So um, I think too it depends on who you're learning from, because every breeder is not on the up and up as much as the next guy. It depends on what what are their motives, what's the reasoning behind. Is it a big huge commercial guy that maybe they're just worried about the bottom line and you're learning more of the business side of it? Or is it someone that is just a snake nerd and they got a whole bunch of different species and they just want to figure them all out? So it that varies too, so that's going to depend on which is better and which isn't. For me, I kept for 10 years before I decided to breed. And within that 10 years, I made so many mistakes, like a ridiculous amount of mistakes, just like we all have. But, and it's just like anything else in life. Like, as long as you learn from the mistakes that you make and you don't continually make them, that's good. This whole hobby is a hobby of trial and error. So even if you are learning from a big breeder, it's not going to have the same impact as if you make the mistake yourself, or it's your, let's say, like Chuck alluded to, it's your expensive mistake. It's just humans in general, you can tell somebody the right way to do something 100 times, but until you actually make the mistake yourself, it's not going to stick. That's just how we're wired. So, there's that to factor in too.
I imagine too that if you're making a mistake with your own animals versus with somebody else's, and you're probably going to learn a lot more and take it more seriously if they're your own animals rather than somebody else's too. Yeah,
for sure. So, so in those 10 years, I just kind of honed in. I just had carpets at the time, so I just kind of learned as much as I could. I gathered as much information as I could, researched on the internet, did everything I could, made my mistakes. And pretty much my goal was to vend a show. So my idea was I wanted to, when I put that table of carpets out, if someone came to me, there wasn't going to be many topics that I couldn't, handle and, take care of for them. I wanted to be that guy. I didn't want to be a jack of all trades. I wanted to have that,
that focus,
that genus down. So
at
the time, I mean, now obviously I got a whole bunch of species, but that was the initial thought. So.
Yeah. Very cool. All right. That's pretty good rebuttal.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, I think kind of piggybacking off of what I said earlier too. I mean, you do get to learn while you work for a professional breeder, but you learn with their money, and your mistake in their collection isn't your loss, it's their loss. And so, kind of two-sided there, right? Like you can't cost a professional breeder lots and lots of money by continually making mistakes. So you do have an onus to perform, and they do have an onus to teach you correctly so that, they protect their investment while investing in you as well. So, I think that can look both ways there. And, I mean, I think you learning in somebody else's collection and then deciding what you want to do. If like you gave the example of like a breeder who's all over the place and has lots of different things. And if you can kind of take care of that and you watch that collection work and you see how that is, like selling all kinds of random things and what that means in your room versus like how, gosh, this guy has all this different stuff. It doesn't line up very well. We have problems kind of keeping, this stuff that's kept differently than this stuff breeding consistently. I see that. So I think there's lessons to be gleaned and potentially savings to you when you decide like, okay, this is the direction I want to go when I set up my collection. This is, and so your initial investment in setting up your room, setting up your, how you're keeping them, your racks, your cages, your whatever, whether you're going to do bioactive, whatever you're going to do can kind of be learned and move through other people's mistakes. So just, kind of the same idea, but really kind of honing in on that.
Okay. One thing I maybe request you to bring into there, Chuck, is maybe also training under other professionals, like in a zoo setting or like a nature center or something like that. Maybe include that in some of it too. But yeah, sorry, Billy, go ahead and respond.
Yeah,
to that.
No, those are if you could get into a zoo situation or a nature preserve or something like that. I mean, yeah, that's all really good. Learning that you can get from there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, definitely. Like, say if it's, if I make a mistake in another person's collection, it's their loss. It's not my loss. So just to kind of double down on what I said before, like, yeah, I'm getting information from there, but is it really going to is it going to stick as much if I'm doing it for someone else, when I think of a big breeder and working for him and stuff, I think of like the old BHB, size collection and stuff.
Yeah.
Another thing I worry about with, that situation, if you work for them, right, like you're going to get burnt out, like, are you even going to want to stay in the hobby? Is it something that you went into because you enjoyed animals and this was something you wanted to do? And yeah, you're messing with, the owner's money and stuff, and it's all on them. But at the end of the day, are you going to even still be in the hobby? How many people have worked for bigger breeders and aren't in the hobby now once they stopped working for them?
Mm-hmm.
So if you learn on your own, yeah, the risk is on you. If there's a mistake, it's going to be on you. But there's a flip side to everything. Every success will be 100% yours, and you can have pride and ownership to that. And I think there's definitely something, to that, to where once you have that success on your own, you figured it out, like nothing can beat that. You can follow the formula that the bigger guy had, every single day, and everything works, everything's fine. Okay, that's cool. But when you try something that's your own, personal thought that you came up with through researching and reading papers and natural history and all that, you're going to be that much more excited, and it's going to reinforce what you're doing. And it's not just the bottom line of, okay, we need to have 100 clutches this year to meet, our demand for, supplies and all that, because like I have a decent overhead. I probably have 200 snakes or so, depending on time of year. And, it's not cheap, but that's not something I focus on. I'm not, like, oh, I have to sell this many snakes to do that. So it just depends on the mentality that you're going with. So yeah, that'd be my biggest thing, is you just don't want burnout.
Yeah. Do you do it professionally, or you still have a day job, that kind of thing, and kind of do it as a hobby business?
I work 2 jobs.
Okay.
And do this. Yeah. So no, definitely not professionally.
Yeah. And I maybe to piggyback on that too, like if you're working for, and maybe you'll bring this up, so I hope I'm not stealing your thunder, but if you're working for somebody else, they're probably not giving you the fun stuff either. Like they're going to keep all the fun stuff for themselves. If they're going to pay somebody, it's to pick up poop and to feed animals, that's about it, or clean cages, that's about all you're going to be doing. And sometimes they'll kind of partition you to a certain group of animals, so you may not get that diversity anyway. But yeah
definitely, that's what I would do. I would do the cool stuff.
Right. You set up the babies or do fun stuff like that. All right, Chuck.
So I mean, a lot of good stuff covered there. I think kind of going back to like zoos and preserves and in professional settings, if you want to work in those settings, they have a very regimented and stringent way that they do things. They expect you to, the care protocols all come from research. They all come from a place of some sort of scientifically proven fact, hopefully for the most part,
Ideally,
or something or something that has been proven to be effective. They're obviously not going to engage in stuff that is hokey or this is not in their interest to do. So I think if you do get in that kind of a way, you're already starting out in kind of a scientifically and methodical method. Whereas, I think most people who start don't, you can understand that there's research out there, but most people don't know how to like negotiate to that until they've been doing it for a while. So, potentially there's the pitfall of like, where is the good information? How do I find that? Oh, these are all professionals. These people all do this for a living. These people all understand the access. Oh, these people, know who to talk to about that thing. You have constant access to a good professional veterinarian. Like there's some definite ins to that. I think there is definitely a potential pitfall in working for somebody else, in that you have to do it their way, right? They call the shots, and as Justin kind of alluded to, maybe you don't get to, I guarantee at the San Diego Zoo, you don't start working with the king cobras on day one. You don't get to work with venomous. There's you got to work your way up with that. And that's a good thing, right? That's a good thing. But I would argue that even in your professional job, you didn't start at the top doing all the cool high speed, low drag shit, right? You have to start at the bottom, learning how to do stuff. But nonetheless, you still learned, you were still trained. And so, you get to experience the worst part of it. Oh man, this is cleaning tons of shit and this is a lot of work. Whereas you get that experience ahead of having to do that under your own thing. And, that gives you the idea of what the expectation is going to be if you go ahead and do that yourself. And then I guess, you got a response, Billy, or I've got some more, but
go for it, man.
Okay.
No, so, I'm hitting them all down.
I think the part about working for somebody else though is, yes, you have to do it their way. Yes, there's that expectation, you're learning, but hey, that's their collection and you can walk away at any time. Hey, thanks. I appreciate this. It was cool. I'm out. And that's not a whole pile of animals that you have to worry about. That's their animals, and they got to worry about figuring out, whether they're going to take over, whether they're going to bring somebody else in to take over. Meanwhile, you're free to go do whatever you want. So I think, that's a definite bonus. And you can kind of, pump those brakes whenever you want to. So, yeah.
I'd throw in too, like when you're, working for a zoo or, they usually have really good like quarantine procedures and separate facilities and things. So you kind of see the benefit of those kind of things. And like you said, veterinary staff, that's huge.
And I mean, like, the learning curve from not learning that stuff and getting getting your big collection going, and then getting like Nido, and then it just rips through your collection, and it's horrible. Like that's the hardest learned lesson. But if you were to work for like a zoological association, they're not playing that. You know what I mean? Could it happen? Yeah. Sure, it could, but it's a lot less likely if you're following stringent protocols of quarantine and stuff like that. So
yeah, really good points. The whole you can walk away at any time. I mean, that's a big plus. I know I'm supposed to be against it, but that's one that I think doesn't get thought about. But two, I mean, how many people they'll stay long enough to hate it? A lot of people don't know when to cut the cord, if you will. So I got a couple things I want to hit on from what you said. So with the regulated policies and stuff, so one of my jobs is I work EMS. So I work EMS, and then my second job is I work EMS at Busch Gardens here in Tampa. So we work a lot with the zoo staff and all that kind of stuff. I have been in the snake room, the reptile area, and I've tried to talk to those guys like about medical stuff. I'm not going to go in there and be like, "Hey, I keep and breed snake." Like that's not how you get into that. But notice like they are super stringent to where I know because of professionally what I do, if they get bit by a certain species, they need to go to a certain hospital. Well, I know on the one, like they have cards on all their venomous. So whenever they're working a venomous, they clip the card to them, and it has all their information and all that information of the species, what antivenom, and what hospital they need to go to. So I saw that one was not the right hospital. So I'm like, hey, do we have the call to say that? And he's like, no, whatever's on the card is what happens. I'm like, I'm telling you right now, that's not the right one. It was like, no, this is how it is. Don't question it. So I could see where that would be a turnoff, even if in keeping, like, hey, I'm seeing this in other places. Could we implement that here? No, it's A, B, C, and D. And this is how it is, and this is how it's going to go. Where if
no matter if they die or they fail, we don't care. Just do it this way.
If he dies, he dies.
Exactly. So, and I mean, too, how many species have suffered from that in, a zoo setting or something like that, to where they're so strict in everything they're doing that even though the information is out there, they won't take. I'm not saying zoos are terrible. Just everything has its pros and cons.
Well, and I mean, who hasn't gone into a zoo and seen an animal that they just know are not thriving and they're not being kept properly, and you're like, come on, guys, you're a zoo. Let's pick it up a little. It's easy easy to criticize from the outside, but at the same time,
absolutely,
it's like, come on, guys. Yeah.
So another point I wanted to bring in. So like with zoos and a nature preserve and all that, like how likely are you to get into that in general, like in the first place? Like how likely am I, let's say this was 10 years ago when I moved down here, I was just a guy that had a couple snakes, and I just went up and was like, hey, I want to be a part of this, can I get in? They're not going to take people like that, so how difficult would it be to get in that position where you can learn those different policies, quarantine procedures, all that, It sounds good, but the reality of it is they're not going to just welcome anybody with open arms. I know at Busch, I think it's at least a bachelor's or something before they'll even look at you.
Yeah.
And then the pay and stuff, like,
yeah, it's one of those things where it's like they want experience, but they're not willing to give unexperienced people experience. And so where do you get the experience?
I mean, that's a problem. Yeah, that's everywhere. Like everyone wants free internships from people before they want to pay them for anything.
But in this case, I mean, you can get experience on your own, like Billy's side says there, and I know that our buddy Steve Sharp, he's in high demand in the zoo field because he did have that experience, keeping and breeding a wide variety of different species before he went into the zoo field. So, it can that can definitely benefit you when you're doing it on your own.
Sure,
definitely. I guess if I'm talking about myself, I'd probably have a little more of a leg to stand on now if I went to the right place than if when I just had, a handful of carpets and I'm just a guy that has a couple snakes in his house, and that's, that's all in. They're like, oh, all right, man. Like,
well, and how easy would it be for Steve to get in there, even with all of his background in reptiles, without his degree from ASU, right? Like, you still have to meet the minimum requirement for a professional,
unless you have unless you have someone track record.
I mean, I was at one, wasn't sure what I was doing before I had my degree, and was kind of like, hey, how do I kind of get into the reptile department at the zoo without a degree, and they're like, well, they have certain like mentorship programs and they do have avenues, but to your point, you're 100% right. Like there is definitely keys that guard the gates in definitely some of those professional organizations, and you know, maybe rightfully so. You know, that it's obviously if you want to have a professional organization, you want to have standards around who you let in. And hey, I mean, I still would say if this is what you wanted, if you wanted to become a professional breeder and you were going to school to get a degree, you get a degree, you start working at the zoo, you start learning those things, and then you move on, kind of like Steve is, you know, interested in potentially moving on to do his own thing. Now, I'm not saying he wants to go be a professional breeder, but potentially he learned a lot of skills through that track that he maybe didn't have, or he had access to knowledge and experience that he didn't have. And I think, you know, the other thing that working for a professional can give you is kind of, you're in the in crowd, right? You're with somebody who has a name, that name knows other people. And so it's a networking issue, you know, and you know, as we all know in professional settings, networking is everything, almost more than how great you are sometimes, which maybe for right or wrong, you know, that's how it is, right? Mm-hmm. So that networking really can give you that in potentially with other, you know, with other professional breeders that like, well, I worked for him for a while and then I went over here because he had this, and, you know, so you potentially could laterally transition in a professional setting with a professional breeder if you're good and you're in demand and you're kind of one of those people, and then kind of go on to do whatever. And then I think, you know, just really just the other thing around that would be the access to breeding stock that you could potentially get with that networking with those professionals. You get to see how they're kept. You get to meet and know other people, and you know, sometimes being that breeder can get you access to stuff that may be hard for the entry level kind of keeper who wants to get his foot in the door professionally.
Oh, that's a good point. I hadn't thought about, you know, the access to rare and less frequently bred animals from other breeders, because that's usually probably who they talk to a lot of times, or the guys who have the big pockets and big collections or something, potentially.
Yeah, well, with that, I mean, that's a really good point. I don't disagree with that at all. But for the sake of the show.
Yeah, for sure. That's what sometimes we got to do it for the sake of the show.
Yeah, for sure. So for the sake of this show, let's say Chuck is a big time breeder, right? He's on top of the mountain. There's Halmaheras everywhere, right? He's the guy. And I work under him. You know, I'm his number one or whatever. And I, you know, do a lot of stuff. It takes a specific type of person to be able to go from that role to go to go on their own and make a name for themselves. Or am I always going to be, oh yeah, you're Chuck's number one. That's how everyone remembers you when you network. That's, you know, you'll never get away from that shadow type of thing, you know. And is that going to hurt you? Is that going to help? I think that's going to be, you know, situation to situation. So that's my take on that.
Yeah.
I mean, if I could just respond though, I really feel like though, you know, how many ball python breeders are there out there? And if you're working for Justin Kabilka, that is only going to help you. Even if you're Justin Kabilka's number one guy, rather than working for Larry's balls, you know what I mean? Like, you know, I mean, maybe people know Larry's balls, but they may not know you're Larry's number one ball guy. You know what I mean? You know what I'm saying? It
doesn't carry the weight.
It doesn't carry the same weight. So I do think that really being a widely known number one for a guy like that doesn't really hurt you. I get your point about potentially being pigeonholed, but I would also argue that you got to go out and make your own. You know what I mean? Like it's hustling in the streets out here, and what doing tough stuff and getting a name for yourself is because you have a talent and you've shown the industry, who has a lot of talented people in it, that you did stuff that to earn their respect. So I think at some point you got to cut your own teeth on stuff too.
I wonder too if I can't think of any examples, and I don't know a ton of people that have kind of worked for pro breeders and then kind of gone out on their own but you wonder if they see them then as competition, and if they know their weaknesses and try to put in hints about, oh, this guy, when he worked for me, I don't know, he was a little they kind of so I wonder if that happens, if that's a problem, or you might face that if you try to go out on your own. That might be a challenge.
Sure.
It's going to be a case by case thing. And I think it depends on the individual too. Some people are going to be cutthroat. Some people are going to be genuine people. It depends. And we have both types of people in the hobby. So,
definitely.
You got to be careful. That's for sure.
Yeah. There's people you've never met in your life who, if you're doing well, will shit on you just for the fact to shit on you. So,
and they have a great online persona that everybody thinks they're a saint, and then all of a sudden, I heard stories. Maybe they're not.
That's the beauty of the internet, right? The best and worst thing that's ever happened to us. So you had another point I wanted to hit on, having to do it their way. So I can relate to that. So I'm really good friends with Casey Cannon. You guys have had him on a couple times.
Yeah.
So he actually came and helped. We have a couple of joint projects and stuff, so he'll come down and hang out. And he was helping me clean cages and stuff. And I didn't realize, you don't realize when you're by yourself, like the routine you have in a certain way things are done. And then he's doing his thing, and I'm like, whoa, like, wait, what are you doing? And that's probably a pro of, doing it yourself and having your own way, is that you don't have to correct anybody or worry about, if they're not doing it my way, then they're doing it the wrong way, or is it gonna hurt anything or anything like that. So if you're doing it on your own and learning on your own, then you get your own routine. You don't even have to worry about that. It's just that's your way of doing things. When you said that, it reminded me of seeing Casey do baby tubs, and I was like, what are you, what are you doing?
That's not the way I do it here. Yeah. Stop.
But then I had to take a step back. I'm like, it's literally just cleaning it, paper, water, good. As long as that gets done, who cares?
Yeah.
But it's something I've never had to worry about, because I've always done it my own way. Another thing I wanted to bring up. So, as I said at the beginning of the show, I tried to get a mentor. I tried to get people to teach me things, and I guess this was before, how do I say this? I guess it was before I was known, if I'm known, we all have our own little circles and stuff. I guess before that happened, one of the biggest things, I didn't know how to sex snakes. And what's the biggest thing that they put out there? There's little bullet points that in the hobby, it's like, okay, to learn this, you need to find somebody to teach you experience, this and that, blah, blah, blah. I have a pretty good reptile presence here in this area, the Tampa, Orlando, just Florida in general. There's reptiles everywhere. So you can't throw a rock without hitting somebody that has some type of experience.
Yeah.
I reached out to a lot of people, and not one would take the time to, show me how to probe or teach me how to pop or whatever that. I got sent videos, and they're like, oh, you'll figure it out. You'll be fine. But you hear so many times like, oh, you need to have someone experienced. You can hurt the animal. You can this, you can that. But I was in that situation. I had no choice but to learn myself and do that. And luckily it worked out, but
yeah. That's funny because I heard a story about a certain, I guess, higher profile breeder and in Florida, and he was going to sex a snake and ended up sticking the probe in the rectum up the cloaca the wrong way.
Yeah.
And he's like,
took a left
oh
when he
yeah,
should have took a right.
that's a male, yeah. So maybe that's the problem he had too. He couldn't find anybody to teach him, so he just had to learn on his own.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's definitely times when you're potentially working for somebody else where you're like, all right, I know already I do that better than you.
Yeah.
Like, you don't know what the fuck you're doing. So
yeah.
That's gonna be a thing. And hey, I mean, potentially the other side to that is maybe they're not good at sexing snakes, but they have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of snakes. And you're having to sell snakes for them. You're going to have to get really good at sexing those snakes. And oh, by the way, you have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of snakes to practice on versus, you starting yourself and having, so one, and you have heard about big breeders who maybe have sent people incorrectly sex snakes. That's on the big breeder's name. That's not on their people who sex their snakes wrong. So potentially not good for you as the potential employee or intern or whatever, but definitely worse for them. So again, I think there's certain things that hopefully if they're good, they know how to do that stuff and they teach you correctly so that they don't sullen their name. But if you're sullening their name, at least you're getting good practice sulling it. So, soiling it, right? Like,
yeah,
kind of how I see it.
Yeah. Well, our buddy Ben Morrill is going to make all that a thing of the past, right? We can just send in a shed skin. We don't need to pop or probe or anything.
Yeah.
Little shout out to Ben. That's all.
Yeah.
Oh, definitely deserves
it.
Yeah.
And I wanted to run back because I realized I kind of skipped over it, but when you were talking about in a really good point about places that have the basically the wrong information on their protocol, I think probably the bigger issue there would be people who have no protocol, and so potentially when I think about like the repercussions of those two kind of diametrically opposed things. What's worse is somebody who has a bunch of cobras or venomous and they get bitten and they have no bite protocol. My goodness.
Oh, you just made fun of me and it's coming back to
So, and what is that? That ends up on the news. That is the antithesis of potential legislation in that state versus, yes, this guy worked for the zoo. It makes the news, but nobody wants to legislate a zoo over that kind of a mistake because they're licensed and insured and they have all these protocols and they had a flaw in their protocol and they have to address it. I think that, it's just viewed publicly a little bit differently.
Yeah.
So I would just respond to that one.
Yeah, no, definitely being in Florida, I can.
Yeah, for sure. Right. Yeah.
That does happen. Yeah. Because we got people that are, you also run into people that are just too prideful to admit that, they were wrong or they're doing something wrong or whatever.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's people being people, right? You can't.
Oh yeah. You're never going to get around. Yeah. You're never going to get around that. And I mean, that isn't to say that there's not, professionals out there who have sloppy protocols and don't, do things the right way. And I think Phil Wolf kind of brought that into focus when we were talking about venomous mentorship and was kind of like, some of his horror experiences on having to learn from people who weren't doing it the right way. So, again, like, you can suffer from the ills of a professional doing it the wrong way too. So, I mean, that's notable.
Oh, definitely. He's told me, more than a few stories of
Yeah.
why he does certain things because of, big places he worked in the past. And
Yeah.
yeah, that's, I mean, I'm helping your argument, but yeah,
Well,
it
but
is
I
what
mean,
it
it's,
is.
just because you have a big name or whatever, it's not all, it ain't all roses, like there's, when you get down in the weeds, sometimes you find out that, there's more to it,
Yeah. Well, let's say I work for a ball python breeder, and that's all they know. And I know that my interest is, what I have, carpets and old world rats and, excuse me, stuff like that. There's only so much of that information and knowledge that I get from there that I can apply to my animals. Yeah, you can apply a lot. Then definitely the business side of it and stuff. But there's still, even if you learned a lot from them, you're still going to have to, when you branch out, learn on your own or learn your own, make your own mistakes to learn from and stuff. So even if it's a combination of the two, there's still pros to both of them, I guess.
Yeah.
You can add it that way. And then how many, I guess from what you were saying, Chuck, that just because they're a big name doesn't mean that they're on the up and up on, stuff you'd expect them to. How many people just kind of skated by? Let's say I've been in it for 20 years. I'm well known around the country. I go to all the big shows, and I have had guys that they'll do the dirty work for me. They palpate the females for me. They sex all the babies for me. They deal with the trouble feeders. They do all that. To where next thing I know, it's been 2 decades, and I can tell you about the animal, but if you come to me with a problem and I need to troubleshoot, I might not have the best information, so it doesn't, just because he's that bigger guy doesn't mean that he's going to be the pinnacle of knowing the answers to all your questions.
Sure.
I've heard of a lot of those pinnacle guys that are taking credit for somebody else's work and making it seem like they did it all just because it was done at their company, and that's.
And I'm just gonna say, if you're working for them and that's the case, fuck them. Who gives a fuck? That's their problem, right? I mean, you know what I mean? If you learn how to do all that shit and it sets you up and you walk away a fucking badass and they burn themselves to the ground, that's their fucking fault.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
But taking that, if, let's say you're the guy that, let's say you're Justin that, learned on his own. He's got he knows how to troubleshoot everything. He's seen just about everything that can happen. He produces all this stuff. You go to him and he has an answer for everything. Every bit of advice he gives you, it works because he's learned from experience and he's learned from actually being, in the trenches, if you will, with those situations. I'm going to take that guy over the guy that just spent a lot of money and got a big collection that he had to hire somebody to take care of it for him and maybe missed out on those opportunities to learn. Just another take on it. I'm not saying big breeders are like that. That's, I hope that's not how it's coming across.
No, I take your point.
Yeah. And that has, I mean, there are examples of that, they usually don't last too long, but there are examples of that.
Thankfully.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Oftentimes though, those big breeders are, they've gone through a lot and kind of learned on their own before they got to that point. And so, but I would say probably the majority are that way, but I'm sure there's several that break those rules as well.
Oh yeah. I see them all the time here. The market here, and not to like poo poo on that community, but you see it a lot in ball pythons because they're, they don't take up a lot of space. You can get them to breed, fairly quickly. And, I've seen plenty of breeders around here that, they put in a few grand, they get, a couple racks, they end up their first year, they end up, with clutches and stuff. And you ask them questions and they can tell you all the morphs and they can tell you, this times that and the ratio and probability of this and all that. But if you asked them, let's say a natural history question or, hey, what if the snake gets constipated, or what if this? They haven't experienced it yet because maybe they got into it for different motivation besides love of the animal.
Mm-hmm.
And I hate to say it, but I've seen that multiple times here going to the local shows and stuff. So it's,
well, I mean, definitely people with money in their eyes and cash to burn have fucked it up with reptiles, over and over and again. Like, definitely you see that, right? Like that's a thing. And that's not even just a thing in ball pythons. That's a thing in reptiles.
Always has been.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And that's the most hilarious part of it is like Justin says, if you want to make $1 million in reptiles, you have to start with 2, right? Like it's not, and so those people who are good businessmen, they and they want to make a living at it. That's who you want to learn from. And obviously, like, you may not, like, to your point, you may not always have access to those people. They may not be in your area. They may not always be super open to, like, hey, yeah, come on, I'll show you some things. I'll teach you, because they're also concerned about their competition, because, selling snakes is like, because of the mantra of like, oh, everyone should be a breeder. Everybody needs to do this. So, every breeder's like, man, am I just making another competitor for myself right here by making this sale? So it's kind of a, there's always these like crazy push-pull forces, but I do think that, when you talk about getting in and building a collection that becomes a business, to become professional, you start at one. There's definitely tiers to being a professional breeder, and starting at the bottom in those types of sales are not the same as working like the Bells or somebody who works at large scale, right? So if you can get that large scale experience, it's easy to kind of back calculate yourself to figure out how to get there. But if you've never been there, it might be easier to see it first working successfully, and hopefully it works successfully. Or I guess at the very least, maybe you're like, all right, that's not how to do it, right? So I don't believe in bad data. Everyone can teach you something, right?
Sure. I've made this kind of plea before, but I want to just throw this in again. If we got to get past this whole multi-level marketing idea of reptile breeding, like, oh, you buy this morph and breed it to this morph and you can make babies and sell them for this much. And, you make your money and stuff like that. I'm so sick of the whole pyramid scheme ideal for reptiles and I'm guilty of kind of pushing that a little bit, several years back, like, hey, when I was into ball pythons and things like that. And it's hard not to get caught up in that excitement of the new morphs and the new combinations and all that kind of stuff. But I really think it's does more damage than good. Let's move past the pyramid scheme.
I do think, though, because all 3 of us are breeders, right? All 3 of us breed, and I don't have a website or a business or anything like that, but I like breeding. That's what I like to do, and I like to breed stuff that kind of matters in my, I would hope, in my opinion, that there's kind of a point to it in the end, right? Whether that's like entry level geckos that I can get a kid geeked and hook them into reptiles and they love it, or establishing a species that has been, notoriously difficult to breed. Like, there should be something there, but oh fuck! I just totally lost my whole train of thought.
Well, I mean, I think I kind of know what you're driving at, but like, if you're doing it for the love of the animals, that's got to come first, because you're not going to have any staying power if it's for money. And like Chuck just said, if you want to make $1 million, you got to figure out what to do. So you're not going to be rich breeding reptiles, at least in the immediate, term. You've got to put in a lot of work and a lot of effort to make that money, and it's very difficult.
Morph game shows you that so fast.
Yep.
I mean, that's honestly, that's one of the better negative sides of the morph game is you get all these people who come in who are like, yeah, I'm going to put this big money down. Yep. I'm going to get these things. And by the time they get them up to size, their investment has decreased so much in value because of the way the production and time happens that they're like, fuck, now I have to spend the next 6 years selling these things to make my money back versus the guy who bought first and he only had to spend, 3 years or 2 years. You know what I mean? Like, so then you're like, oh, I didn't understand the game I was playing.
And if they worked for a big breeder, they would see that without having to learn that hard lesson, right?
I mean, potentially,
because they'd see, oh, these guys are just trading amongst themselves. They're not really putting those new morphs out on the market, except for silly money. They're actually trading them amongst each other rather than, selling them for big cash. So. But they put on the airs that, oh, I just sold, I moved 10 of these and they're $60,000 snakes, even though they just traded a bunch of lower level morphs for them or something.
They sell the dream.
Yep. Don't look behind the curtain. Don't look behind the curtain.
Yeah. Well, and selling the dream keeps perpetuating the cycle, right?
Yeah.
Getting other people to be like, oh, I'm in this because I want the dream. Like, it's.
Go find 10 of your friends and get them to join up, and then you can be like me.
It's like a my God, it's a multi-level marketing scheme. Holy fucking shit. Like,
No, I have a whole bunch of morph carpets that I remember when I first saw them, I was like, holy crap, I'll never get these. Mm-hmm. Now I see, like you said, like I mess with carpets because I like carpets. I don't think anybody like really gets deep into carpets because they're looking for the payday. Mm-hmm. I came to terms with it a long time ago. I'm never going to make my money back. It's just, it's just the nature of the beast.
For the love of them. Yeah.
But I see some of the stuff I have, and I remember when I first saw it, I was like, oh, this will be so out of reach and all that. Mm-hmm. And, now they're, affordable and I'm able to work with them. And I don't look at it like, man, I wish this thing was still $3,000 and I could, get a clutch of them and make 20 grand. And I could care less if they're 150 and I can get someone jazzed about the species. That's why I got into it in the first place. That's why I put in all the groundwork to learn on my own and make the mistakes and all that. So I could be that person to get someone else excited about it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I mean, I think that's one of the coolest reasons to work with stuff that ain't worth shit. You know what I mean? Because you don't get it's already priced right. It's already, and if it's cool and you like it, I mean, I don't mean this in a negative way, but nobody's special and unique. If you like it, there's going to be other people who like it. Right. Mm-hmm. And maybe, you're weird and you like angry scrub pythons and that's your thing, but there's still people out there who like angry scrub pythons. Now there's not a lot of them because nobody likes getting assaulted repeatedly, but they're out there, you know what I mean? So all shapes and sizes.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, I work with a lot of old world rats that are, I hate saying this, but it's kind of what the hobby has coined certain species, like the throwaway species. Mm-hmm. So like the like radiated rats and yellow striped rats and, a lot of the stuff from Indonesia and all that they're just hell on wheels and they're always going at you. And, you can get them wholesale for $20 and all that. Like I have groups of those that I'm just so excited about. Like that's honestly what I'm most excited about this year is having a shot at producing radiated rats and flavolineus because like they're just such cool species, So I'm really grateful that I'm able to do this. And I joke and say I have my real life and then I have my reptile life and I'm able to keep them separate.
Yeah.
And the fact that I can work with all these different species. And I found myself, the more I've gotten into the hobby, you find yourself in little circles. Like I'm in the Morelia circle and I'm in, some old world rat circles and, all that. And it's it's cool. And like you said, just trading them all around, yeah, we're all a part of that, in our own little circle. So that just makes it more enjoyable. And I guess I lost my train of thought on that.
No, that's kind of how
that's it.
Kind of how it used to be, where it was more like, you didn't necessarily worry about breeding, but if you were lucky enough to breed, then you hooked up your buddies who were into the same things you were, and and you corresponded by pen and paper or something. It's like
another point that I can bring up is how many people get in with the sole purpose of breeding. Like I said earlier, I kept carpets for 10 years without even thinking about breeding, because I wanted to learn everything I could about them as far as husbandry and, all. Like Morelia is if you don't know anything about Morelia and then you get into it, it is daunting. Like we all take it for granted with all the subspecies and crosses and morphs, and now this is changing, that's changing. And, you take it for granted once you get it all straight in your head. But taking that time to actually learn the species and not worry about, oh, well, I bought this pair of snakes for X amount of dollars, I need to recoup that. I think it only helps in the long term.
Yeah.
So I try to tell people that, and a lot of people don't like it, but like I'm nice about it. But like I had a quick little story. I had a guy come up to me at a local show, and he asked if I had any. He was looking for some more of a ball python. And I'm like, well, I don't have any. If you look at the table, there's not a ball python on there. And he was like, okay, well, I'm looking for this. And I got to get it now because I just rescued this something female, and I got to breed them this year. And I was like, hey, man, and I said it just like this. I'm like, you don't have to breed that animal. Like you just said it came from a rescue. Like, what are you doing? Well, he just turned around, walked away, and went to the next guy that would sell him what he wants. And then he's going to try to produce more, And I really feel sorry for those people because I feel like they don't, how do I say this? I guess everybody doesn't have the same passion, if that's the right word, for the hobby. Like, obviously guys like us do. And it's, I couldn't imagine doing this and not being like all in, how miserable would that be to like clean?
I would say, I would kind of say, I feel like I have some disdain for those people. and I feel sad for their animals, right?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
That. I'll take,
Well, I mean, it's the same thing as the lower level of the multi-level marketing scheme. The guys at the bottom are doing all the heavy lifting and get all the crap and have to pay all this money for their product and, have a hard time moving it. And the people up above them are just laughing all the way to the bank. I don't be like, don't be the bottom rung. And that's the thing is you can be passionate about something that you're excited about, but don't do it for the money. It's just, it's not there. It's a pipe dream,
It's not a thing.
Yeah. And I'll go ahead. Sorry.
Well, I was going to say, it's not a thing unless you do like what the Bells used to do, where, because they're not as big as they used to be. They've gotten rid of a lot of their stuff, but they used to be the largest producer, I know, in the States, possibly the world.
Yeah.
And they had the big box pet store accounts.
Yep.
So they were supplying, Petco and PetSmart across the country with, their bearded dragons, ball pythons, corn snakes, king snake, all that. Yeah, they're making money. They're not going to do that and put that, many animals out if they're not making money. But
money for sure.
It took them time to build up to that. They didn't just say, hey, I'm going to breed snakes. And, here's this 20-acre, place that I have all these facilities on. And I'm just going to start cranking out all these animals. It also took time for them to build up and stuff. So,
Well, and I think, to giving you a point here, when you get those bigger people, and I was thinking of, I was thinking of Dan and Nicolette when we were at NARBC, and I've always thought of them as ball python people, right? And then when we went to the show last time, I don't even think they had a single ball python on that table at all, but they had, I mean, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of colubrids and knobtails and just different stuff. So it's like they have to, you know, because they get it that size, they have to go at what's popular. So, and you know, just like the 80s, those fashions come back around again, and then they wax and they wane. And, you know, the Mexican black rat, the Mexican black king snakes, like they were, you know, cheap as dirt, and now they're in vogue again, and they're expensive, and so, you know, you're kind of on that windmill cycle. And I guess, you know, if you're cool with that and you just like breeding stuff and that's how you make your living and you're okay with that, cool, man. But I definitely could see like, fuck this, I don't want to work with this stuff, this is what's popular, fuck, okay, well, I guess I got to do that, you know. And that's that to me would be no fun. So you know, I think there's definitely something to be said for having your own freedom and being able to, you know, punch your own ticket. So yeah. But again, you know, Nick Mutton, a guy who's punching his own ticket. So, you know, you can do it. You just got to be the guy. You know what I mean? If that's what you really love, you got to be the guy. That's hustle. That's work. That's why Nick's on the motherfucking phone every day, you know, clamming you, you know, talking you up, not getting off, like, you know,
an hour minimum.
Hour minimums. Easy.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I think this has been a really insightful discussion. A lot of good points being made. You guys got anything else you need to put out there? We covered it. You got any closing statements?
I feel like we covered it. I mean, both sides have its positives, you know, and both sides have its negatives. So I think we both did a good job at really talking for both sides, because it's just it's one of those topics that there's really no right answer, you know. Like I said a couple times, I wish like hell I could have found somebody to help me get through the growing pains and stuff. But the fact that I didn't, you know, years later, I appreciate that I was able to do it on my own and, you know, learn that way. So,
you know, the best lessons are often the hardest lessons learned. And those lessons are often done through, you know, your own mistakes. So I fundamentally believe in that. You have to, and you know, I think working with a professional breeder or whatever, and having a safe space to make mistakes, you know, i.e. you don't bankrupt yourself by making a mistake, or, you know, and it's in a controlled environment where maybe they're kind of watching over you. Maybe that's great, you know, but in the end, you know, you still have to be the one learning, and having a mentor there is great, but you don't always have a mentor. So it's a minefield of nuance, and not an easy, you know, straightforward one is better than the other.
Well, you could also, just one more point, you can also like learn on your own for 10, 15, 20 years. That doesn't mean that you can't get a quote unquote mentor then and continue to learn. You're going to keep learning no matter what, you know, whether if you're learning from somebody or you're learning on your own or whatever, you know. Don't think just because you've been doing it X amount of years that there's nothing else that you can learn. I mean, Justin, how many things did you and Nick learn, you know, writing the new book?
It's
you guys
twice as long.
You guys know what you're doing.
We'll leave it at that. It's a lot bigger. I think too, like you were talking about with the circles, you know, you get to know people that have similar interests, and you can, and that's when the real kind of ideas are bounced off each other, and you know, hey, have you thought about this, or have you tried this, and you actually learn quite a bit when you know. What network, what Chuck was talking about, you network and you kind of get to know those people, and then, you know, you grow together, and those are some of my favorite. I mean, that was kind of a little bit of the impetus for the show, is to bounce ideas and hear the other side and see kind of things from a different point of view, because you don't learn anything if you're set in your ways and you're not listening to the other side. You're not thinking about, the alternatives. You just, this is the way I do it. I just put these two together in November, and then I gather eggs, and it's like you gotta kind of think outside the box sometimes, and the more people you have in that circle, the more brain power you've got collectively, and the more you can learn as a group and grow together. So it's and the communities out there's some really great communities out there. You're sure gonna have your bad apples, but for the most part, there's a lot of good people, and you can find them through various means. But yeah, that's a good way to do it. All right. Well, good stuff, guys. I neglected to ask you. This has been I've been scratching my head about this for a while, but where's your company name come from? And pronounce it again for me.
It's Uwabami.
Uwabami. Okay.
Yeah, Uwabami Reptiles. My sister actually came up with it. It just means snake in Japanese. Okay. And then my Kenji character also means snake. So,
gotcha. Okay.
I got validated. So, they always talk about the Asian guys coming at the shows, and the little with the fanny pack and all that.
That's a thing. That's a fucking thing.
Yeah, it is.
Well, Justin's like, yep.
It's a great thing too when they come to your table and they're like, they spend serious money sometimes.
Yep.
So they came to my table. They didn't buy anything, so it wasn't one of those stories. But I had maybe next time.
Yeah.
But it was the little older guy, and he only spoke Japanese, and then he had a younger guy,
his interpreter.
Yep.
They always have an interpreter.
So of course they stopped right at my table, and they're like, "Oh, do you do business in Japan?" Because they saw my name. And I was like, "Oh no, I just thought it was cool and a cool idea for a logo." And I didn't want to do like BH Reptiles or something like I wanted to do something original and something simple. So. So, I told them, and then they saw I had CITES stuff on the table. So like, oh, we're not looking for that. But so before they left, I'm like, hey, real quick, am I correct here, or did I completely mess up?
Yeah.
And they, whispered real quick, and then they're like, no, that's right on. That's what it should be. So it's like, yes.
Nice. It wasn't the dumpling soup or something,
Yeah, right. Yeah.
You hear about the tattoos
water
that
and
people
fire
get.
Like, I was just thinking. That's what I was thinking.
That says Kung Pao chicken. It doesn't say snake. Yeah.
Well, I also found out
any like ties to Japan, or was it just kind of something cool?
My sister married a Japanese guy, so I guess that's where it came from. I guess. So it's cool. I like it. My fiance is Asian too. She's not Japanese though, and we've had people come up to the table. We had these two older Southern white ladies come up, and just sweet as could be, but they're like, they see her and she goes, "Oh, I see this is probably because of you with the name and stuff." And she's like, "No, this was way before me. I don't know about that." But it's a conversation starter. So I guess that's what it should
for
be.
sure. Yeah. Oh, that's cool. Okay.
I just want to say that was Justin's dogs and not mine.
Yeah.
That you heard in the background.
That's a rare event. They're usually upstairs.
I know, dude.
I've got an ornery old dog, and we just got a puppy. He's always growling and barking at the puppy. So obnoxious dogs.
They want to get on Fight Club.
That's right. We'll have to have your dogs fight my dogs, and we'll see.
Oh my God.
Well,
call it Reptile Mania.
How do people get in touch with you, Billy?
Yeah, put your info out.
You can get in touch with me, Uwabami, on Facebook, Instagram. I have a YouTube channel, but I haven't done anything in a while on that. Just message me on there. I'm always down to talk to anybody, about reptiles. So, those are the main places. Cool. I mean, that's where we all talk to each other anyway. So.
Right on. Well, appreciate you being on the show and sharing your point of view. It's been a really great discussion.
Thanks. Yeah, I appreciate it. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah. Well, we'll acknowledge the Morelia Python Radio Network, moreliapython.com, or is it MoreliaPythonRadio.com? I really got to get this straight, man. Eric's probably not very happy, but so check them out on all the social medias and all that good stuff. Check me out, Australian Addiction Reptile or AustralianAddiction.com. I should know my own site, Australian Addiction Reptiles, and we'll. How about you, Chuck? How do people find you? You don't want to find Chuck.
I'm not.
Leave Chuck alone.
Yeah, I'm not worthy.
He was late to the show. He doesn't get to plug himself.
Yeah,
that's right. That's right.
Get off his lawn, guys. Get off his lawn.
That's correct.
All right. Well, thanks for listening to Reptile Fight Club, and we'll catch you next week for another episode.
Billy Badass, Justin, and I are fucking out.
Fight Club.